Tulsi Gabbard, Libertarians should support her, so stop inviting me to events for her. What's in the news with stories on drug war, good news ×2, bad boys ×2, and heroes ×2. Finally, an Ask Me Anything where I answer your questions on prostitution decriminalization, voluntarily funded public schools, what podcasts I listen to, Game of Thrones predictions, and eating endangered species. This episode is brought to you by Health Excellence Plus, a health share that has saved my family thousands of dollars and can save you money too. Also brought to you by ForkFest, the third annual decentralized libertarian camping event that happens right before PorcFest, with no tickets and no one in charge.
Welcome to The Lava Flow, channeling the flow of information to the libertarian, anarcho-capitalist, voluntarist, and agorist community. Find us at thelavaflow.com. Here's your host, Roger Paxton.
Thank you for joining me this week. From the home state of the 16th Annual Porcupine Freedom Festival and the 3rd Annual ForkFest, this is the show that will bring you the people, places, and events that everyone in the Liberty Rebellion needs to know. You can catch me on Twitter at the Lava Flow Pod. This is episode 131, Tulsi Gabbard is a Socialist, and it's Thursday, May 16th, 2019, when there have already been more than 323 people killed by police this year, and the United States debt clock shows us at more than $22,290,500 million in debt. What's wrestling my jimmies this week? You're about to find out. Let's do it to it. I knew that as soon as Ron Paul talked positively about Tulsi Gabbard, we would see supposed libertarians coming out of the woodwork in support of her. And I'll be goddamned if I wasn't right. Ron Paul was asked on RT, if Trump is going to be the standard bearer for the Republicans, what do you think of the Democratic candidates right now? Who do you like and who do you not like? Here is Ron Paul's response.
Tulsi Gabbard is by far the very, very best. And she's very, very liberal when it comes to economics. We probably wouldn't agree with too much on economics, but she is good on the foreign policy. She does not want these engagements, which is an economic issue. We'd save a lot of money, by not being engaged like this. But she's the most intelligent and would be the best. If we had to pick one of them to be our president, I think she would be giving us the best chance for bringing about peace.
Within 2 days of this statement, I was invited to a sign-waving event in New Hampshire for Tulsi Gabbard that was being put on and sponsored by supposed porcupines, libertarians who have moved to New Hampshire to be a part of the Free State Project. What the actual fuck? Now, I generally tend to take libertarians in New Hampshire more seriously than a lot of libertarians elsewhere. It takes a lot of commitment to a cause to uproot yourself and move to a new state for that cause. But of course, like everywhere, sadly we have our share of libertarians in name only who support statists. And some of those are jumping on the Gabbard bandwagon because their Lord and Savior Ron Paul had some good things to say about her. Now you guys know that I rarely pay attention to politics anymore, so frankly I knew very little about Tulsi until this statement, except that she's kind of cute, and that she is also very liberal. So I did some digging after Ron Paul said what he said. Sadly, her presidential campaign site has absolutely nothing about her policies or where she stands on anything. So I had to refer to her site that she has still up for her congressional race for the state of Hawaii to see where she stands on things. Shame on her for not having anything about where she stands on her presidential campaign site. That's just ridiculous. Now look, I agree with Ron Paul that Tulsi Gabbard is strong on foreign policy. But goddammit, so is Bernie fucking Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Should we support them too? Fuck no! But, as Ron Paul also said, she is really bad on economics. And not just bad, but socialist bad. Damn near Bernie Sanders bad. Seriously. Her visions page on her congressional site is basically a huge progressive socialist playbook of items. She wants more government and housing to make housing cheaper, because, we've seen that work, like, never. She wants to remove freedom of speech with our money in campaigns by having more government and laws restricting how I can use my money to support politicians if I so choose. She wants taxpayer-funded Medicaid benefits for more people. She wants mandated, forced GMO labeling for companies. Now, even some supposed libertarians call for this nonsense. But I always ask them, what happens if I choose not to label my food product as GMO? The answer is always simple, that eventually men with guns will come and force me to do so, or they'll take me to jail. Tulsi is also for reinstating a federal ban on military-style assault weapons and high-capacity magazines, requiring comprehensive pre-purchase background checks, and closing the supposed gun show loophole, better known as a private sale of my private property. She proudly states on her website that she has an F rating from the NRA, a 0% rating by the Hawaii Rifle Association, and a 100% rating by the Brady Campaign to Prevent Gun Violence. But Tulsi also supports net neutrality, which we've talked about on this show way back in episode 6, the net neutered edition. You can listen to that at thelavaflow.com/6. Make no mistake about it, net neutrality is government force, plain and simple. Tulsi supports universal health care for all Americans. I wonder who she thinks is going to pay for that bullshit. And these are just a few of her socialist ideas. Sounds quite a bit like Bernie Sanders, right? And not a whole lot different from AOC. Look, I get it. Some libertarians want to put support behind politicians. While I believe that non-political action is the best and truest form of libertarianism, not everybody agrees with that, and I get it. I used to be a political libertarian who supported the non-aggression principle. But goddammit, there is no way that you can be a libertarian and support a socialist candidate like Tulsi Gabbard. Now, I'm not afraid to call someone out as a statist if they support statism or statists, period. Support Tulsi if you like. I don't give a shit. But don't call yourself a libertarian while you do it, or I'll call you a fucking liar. Have you subscribed to the Lava Flow on iTunes or any mobile device yet? Then what's wrong with you? Go to thelavaflow.com/subscribe so you don't miss a minute of the show. And while you're subscribing, make sure to leave me a 5-star rating and review the show to help others find our podcast. thelavaflow.com/subscribe.
What's in the news? The news you need to know from a libertarian perspective.
In drug war news, Denver fired a shot across the bow at the drug war by decriminalizing psychedelic mushrooms by approving a ballot measure on the issue. The measure, which was behind in early returns on election night but edged closer with each new batch of ballots counted, ended up pulling ahead with a barely 51% to 49% margin in the final unofficial results that were posted. Its provisions prohibit the city government from using any resources to impose criminal penalties against adults over 21 years of age for personal use and possession of psilocybin, the active ingredient in so-called magic mushrooms. Initiative 301 also specifies that going after people for the mushrooms is the city's lowest law enforcement priority and establishes a review panel to assess and report on the effects of the change by early 2021. The new ordinance, written by an advocacy group called Decriminalized Denver, is just one example of how drug policy reform activists are increasingly setting their sights beyond marijuana, which has been legalized in a growing number of states despite its ongoing federal prohibition. In Oakland, California, for example, advocates said last month that they've secured a city council sponsor for a measure to decriminalize not only magic mushrooms, but also plant-based psychedelics such as mescaline, cacti, ayahuasca, and ibogaine. The resolution could be voted on as soon as this month. In Oregon, advocates are collecting signatures in support of a proposed ballot initiative to legalize the medical use of psilocybin and otherwise lower penalties for using, growing, or delivering it. Researchers are increasingly studying whether psilocybin can help people suffering from conditions like anxiety, obsessive-compulsive disorder, major depressive disorder, and alcoholic dependence, among others, with some positive results to date. Now look, this is great news all around. This means that less taxpayer money will be pissed away on victimless crimes in Denver. It also means that fewer people will face the guns of the drug war in their face. It also means that police officers can focus more on crimes that have actual victims. To say that I'm happy to see this is an understatement. Hopefully, this is the beginning of a trend to make even more drugs legal across the nation. In more drug war news, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker says he's reached an agreement with key lawmakers on a plan to legalize recreational marijuana in the state starting next year. The legislation would allow adults 21 and older to legally buy cannabis for recreational use from licensed dispensaries. Illinois residents could possess up to about an ounce, 30 grams of marijuana, while non-residents could possess about half an ounce, 15 grams. The measure also would automatically expunge some marijuana convictions. If it passes, Illinois would join 10 other states, including neighboring Michigan, in legalizing recreational marijuana. While the Illinois law would take effect January 1st, the first licenses for Illinois growers, processors, and dispensaries wouldn't be issued until May and July 2020, the governor's office said. Pritzker was joined by fellow Democratic lawmakers in Chicago to announce the deal, which comes after years of discussion among state legislators. They said the measure would be introduced Monday, kicking off debate at the legislature where Democrats hold a majority in both chambers. The proposal starts righting some historic wrongs against minority communities that have suffered from discriminatory drug policies and enforcement, the new governor said. Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton said, "This bill advances equity by providing resources and second chances to people and communities that have been harmed by policies such as the failed war on drugs." Look, drug warriors are on notice that the drug war has now been lost, period. They may still be holding out, but it's only a matter of time now. They will keep fighting tooth and nail, don't get me wrong, so it's not time to give up the fight yet. It's just good to know that we are finally on the winning side. As most of you know, I was laid off from my 9-to-5 director of IT job last summer. Among the many terrifying things about losing your job is losing your health benefits. Our family went about 6 months without any kind of health insurance, and the anxiety and worry that came along with that was not insignificant. But after spending dozens of hours researching our options and quickly rejecting the $2,000 a month price tag that came with the options available with traditional insurance, we found Health Excellence Plus, a health share that was a fraction of the cost, and we're glad we did. Only a few weeks after joining as members of this health share program, my wife was diagnosed with a common skin cancer that requires an expensive procedure to remove the cancer and another surgery to repair the damage done from the cancer removal. When this is all said and done, Health Excellence Plus will have saved our family thousands of dollars, and I'll bet they can save you money too. Health Excellence Plus is a health share that meets the requirements of the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. A health share is a community of like-minded, health-focused members who have joined together to share each other's medical costs above an amount they can comfortably afford. A health share is not traditional health insurance. It is designed to be a catastrophic coverage for major items, like my wife's surgery. The cost of an average family insurance policy for a primary 45 years old with a $5,000 deductible is $1,450 per month. A Health Excellence Plus $500 initial insurable amount with a healthcare strategy is only $783. Get started saving money today at thelavaflow.com/health. That's thelavaflow.com/health. In Bad Boys news, a suburban St. Louis police officer who says that she meant to use her stun gun but mistakenly grabbed her service revolver was indicted on a second-degree assault charge for shooting a suspected shoplifter outside of a grocery store. St. Louis County Prosecutor Wesley Bell said that Julia Cruz, 37, is charged in the April 23rd shooting on the parking lot of a Schnucks store in Ladue, one of Missouri's wealthiest communities. The woman who was shot was seriously hurt, Bell said. The 33-year-old woman who was shot, who is also black, remains in the hospital. While authorities said that she will probably survive, her father, Robert Hall, said that she is fighting for her life. Authorities haven't released her name, but her family identified her as Ashley Hall. She has not been charged in the shoplifting. Cruz's attorney, Travis Noble, said after Bell's announcement that Cruz meant to use her stun gun, but mistakenly grabbed her service revolver and shot the woman once. Noble described the officer as devastated and called the shooting a case of weapon confusion that didn't merit the criminal charge. The shooting is among at least 13 since 2001, in which officers said they mixed up their guns and stun guns, University of St. Louis, Missouri criminologist David Klinger said. He noted that police officers typically train by drawing their gun, not their stun gun, and that it becomes habit. Klinger also said that most officers who mistake their gun for their stun guns aren't charged, typically because prosecutors deem the shootings accidents rather than acts of intentional harm. But Bell said that those other officers were facing threats to their own safety. Bell said, in this case, the officer's safety was not in question. You know, I talk often on this show about stories where the cops are treated differently than you or I would be treated in the exact same circumstances. I'm glad to report that, at least in this case, the cop was treated exactly as you or I would be for shooting someone like this. Sadly, though, this is the exception and not the rule. In more Bad Boys news, a 69-year-old great-grandmother whose doctor suggested that she use CBD oil to alleviate her pain was arrested for carrying it at Disney World during a trip that she and her family had planned for 2 years. Hester Jordan Buckhalter had scrimped and saved to spend April 15th at the happiest place on earth, but instead she spent it in jail after she was charged with possession of hashish in Orange County, Florida. Her arrest came after an Orange County Sheriff's deputy discovered CBD oil in her purse at a checkpoint to enter the Orlando theme park, authorities said. Burkhalter had begun using the oil to lessen the pain caused by her arthritis at her doctor's recommendation, which he also put in writing. Burkhalter's container of peppermint CBD oil apparently noted that it had 0 milligrams of THC, but tests run by the deputy allegedly found the oil contained traces of THC. Though Congress last year removed hemp and extracts such as CBD from the federal list of illegal drugs, Florida has not yet signed the newly passed legislation. Burkhalter was released from jail on $2,000 bond after 12 hours. Thankfully, the charges against Burkhalter were ultimately dropped, but the sheriff's office said the arresting deputy was following the law when he took her into custody. He was doing his job. And look, this is what I mean by drug warriors who refuse to give up, even though they've lost. For trace amounts of THC, they arrested an elderly woman for using medicine prescribed to her by her doctor for a product that the U.S. Congress has already removed from a list of illegal drugs. This is just fucking insanity. Fuck drug warriors in the neck for not realizing that they've lost this war. Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians this summer from June 13th through June 18th for ForkFest 2019 at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. ForkFest happens right before the Porcupine Freedom Festival, and ForkFest is decentralized, which means that no one is in charge. This also means that there's no ticket cost. Just reserve your camping or RV site or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 13th through the 18th. You can simply relax and go camping with other liberty lovers, or you can create whatever experience or event you'd like others to have. If you're planning an event for ForkFest, be sure to let others know in advance. You can connect with other ForkFesters via the unofficial Telegram chat or the ForkFest forum. Links to both of those are on the unofficial website, forkfest.party. That's forkfest.party. This is the 3rd year of this event, and I have attended all of them so far, so I hope to see you there this year. Get all of the information at forkfest.party. In Heroes news, we have a brand new hero to thank. David Everett Hale, 31, of Nashville, a former Air Force intelligence officer, has been arrested and charged with espionage for leaking information to the press detailing how the U.S. government uses armed drones for secret assassination missions in foreign countries. According to the Justice Department, Hale, during his time in the Air Force as an intelligence analyst and then later as a private sector employee of a defense contractor, passed along top-secret documents to a reporter, some of which were published. The 2013-2014 timeline during which this leaking allegedly happened suggests that Hale may have played a role in the drone papers, published by The Intercept. The series documented the secret use of drones to kill human targets, both in countries in which we're engaged in authorized military action, like Afghanistan, and countries where we're not, like Yemen and Somalia. The person who leaked these documents to The Intercept revealed that the government classified anybody killed by U.S. drone strikes, even if they weren't targets, as militants, and that's how they were able to insist that civilians weren't being killed in significant numbers. Hale is charged with 5 separate crimes: obtaining national defense information, retention and transmission of national defense information, causing the communication of national defense information, disclosure of classified communications intelligence information, and theft of government property. The maximum penalty for each crime is 10 years, but he likely won't do a stint that long. Instead, he'll face incredible pressure to plead guilty and receive a shorter but still likely harsh sentence. Betsy Reed, editor-in-chief of The Intercept, released a statement declining to comment on whether Hale was the source of information for their drone coverage. She said, "Following in the dangerous path of the Obama administration, the Trump administration is continuing to use the Espionage Act to prosecute whistleblowers who enable journalists to uncover disgraceful, immoral, and unconstitutional acts committed in secret by the U.S. government. At The Intercept, we stand firmly opposed to all such prosecutions." Daniel Hale deserves our support and respect every bit as much as Edward Snowden, Chelsea Manning, and Julian Assange. He's a hero, and he has put his life and liberty on the line to bring us information on criminal actions within the government. Well done, Mr. Hale. Well done, sir. In more heroes news, Chelsea Manning was allowed to leave the federal detention center in Virginia. She had been held there since early March in an attempt to compel her testimony to a grand jury about Manning's 2010 release of a huge cache of government documents to WikiLeaks. Manning's lawyers said in a statement, "Today marked the expiration of the term of the grand jury, and so, after 62 days of confinement, Chelsea was released from the Alexandria Detention Center." But the whistleblower is still not in the clear. Unfortunately, even prior to her release, Chelsea was served with another subpoena. This means she is expected to appear before a different grand jury on Thursday, May 16th, the day this episode comes out. It is therefore conceivable that she will once again be held in contempt of court and be returned to the custody of the Alexandria Detention Center, possibly as soon as Thursday, May 16th. Chelsea will continue to refuse to answer questions, and she will use every available legal defense to prove to District Judge Tringa that she has just cause for her refusal to give that testimony. Also, Swedish prosecutors have reopened an investigation into a rape allegation made against WikiLeaks co-founder Julian Assange back in 2010. The inquiry has been revived at the request of the alleged victim's lawyer. Assange, who denies the accusation, has avoided extradition to Sweden for 7 years after seeking refuge at the Ecuadorian embassy in London in 2012. Swedish prosecutors originally decided to drop the rape investigation 2 years ago, saying they felt unable to take the case forward while Assange remained holed up inside the embassy. But on Monday, Sweden's Deputy Director of Public Prosecutions, Eva-Marie Persson, announced the case would be reopened because there was still probable cause to suspect that Assange had committed the alleged rape. His removal from the embassy and the subsequent decision to reopen the inquiry is likely to raise the question of which extradition request should take precedence, that of Sweden or the United States. Rape is likely to be considered more serious than conspiracy to commit computer intrusion. That would mean ordering Assange's extradition to Sweden. WikiLeaks said the reopening of the rape case would give Assange a chance to clear his name. Assange was accused of rape by a woman and sexual assault by another one following a WikiLeaks conference in Stockholm in 2010. He has always denied the allegations, saying that the sex was consensual. Look, guys, as I've said about Manning and her socialist politics, if Assange is guilty of this rape, that does not change the fact that his actions of revealing information about the corrupt nature of government to all of us is still a heroic act. No one is all hero or all criminal. A person can be a hero in certain acts and still be a rapist or a murderer or something else less than heroic. Look, I hope that he's not a rapist because that will put a pall over his heroic acts, and it probably should. But he still committed heroism by putting his life and liberty on the line to inform us of what he did, and I respect him for that. Exercise your free market muscles by going to thelavaflow.com/support and giving a per episode donation of as little as $1 an episode, or use Bitcoin. Get exclusive content, rewards, and help the Lava Flow become fiscally neutral while providing you more content. thelavaflow.com/support.
Ask me anything. Roger will answer your questions about, well, anything. Do you have a question for Roger? Email AMA@thelavaflow.com or add your question to the latest AMA thread in the Pax Libertas Productions Facebook group.
It's that time again. I'm going to answer your burning questions. Remember, you can ask me your question by adding it to the threads that I post in the Pax Libertas Productions Podcast Fans Facebook group or by emailing me at ama@thelavaflow.com. Or if you're awesome as fuck and you support this show, you can ask me your question in the Lava Flow Super Supporters Facebook group or in Patreon, Bitbacker, or Subscribestar. So let's jump into the questions. Now, traditionally I start with supporters questions, but I've had a couple of non-supporters questions that I've been hanging on to for quite a while that I want to knock out first. Mark West, a longtime friend from all the way back to high school and former LP Arkansas gubernatorial candidate, asks, in light of recent scandals, can you help delineate the difference between decriminalization and legalization of prostitution and virtually every other thing? Doesn't decrim effectively leave sex workers at the mercy of the legal system without rights? Or am I missing something? Well, Mark, sex workers are currently at the mercy of the legal system without rights completely right now. They don't even have the right to earn a living plying their trade to consenting adults. I'm not sure how giving them the right to provide this service leaves them with less rights than they have right now. Today, they face situations where they're unsafe, often assaulted, stolen from, raped, etc., and their only course of action is to report their illegal activity to police in order to report the crimes perpetrated against them. This certainly puts them in a very unsafe situation where they could be arrested by men with guns and thrown in a cage for reporting horrible crimes. Now trust me, I would much rather see full legalization, but at least decriminalization would go a long way to ending the status they're currently facing if a crime is committed against them. However, legalization would give them full legal protections and equality under the law, which is something libertarians should fully support. Decriminalization does not quite do that. Thanks for the question, Mark. The next question comes from Brian Shields, a fellow free coaster, and he asks, would you be against public schools that were voluntarily funded somehow? No, Brian, I wouldn't be. My biggest argument against private schooling is twofold. One, they are funded by theft. And two, they propagate propaganda for the government. I imagine if a school wanted to be 100% open to the public, and they were only funded with donations from willing participants, that would probably solve both of those concerns of mine. However, I ask, why not just put education in the free market? Just like most things in our lives, including most of the most important things in our lives like shelter, food, water, clothing, etc. Free market schools would provide a much better service and product for a better price than any charity or public-funded schools ever could. We are not afraid to pay for food. Why should we be afraid to pay for our kids' education? The vast majority of my tax bill every year goes to education. Could you imagine what I could do with that $8,000 or so every year to educate my own kids? Thank you so much for the question, Brian. Now that I knocked out those old questions, I want to jump back to supporters' questions. I'll start with Daryl W. Perry because he never fails to ask some good ones. First, he asks, what podcast do you listen to? You know, my podcast listening has been tightened up quite a bit lately since I am listening to more and more audiobooks these days. Currently in my podcatcher, I have all of the Pax Libertas Productions podcasts, of course, Criminal, Dash News, Free Man Beyond the Wall, Free Talk Live, the Napster Podcast, the audiobook Speakeasy, This American Life, Skeptoid, Liberty Entrepreneurs, Homecoming by Gimlet, Mass Exoneration, Molten Monitor, The Resistance Broadcast, Science Versus, Star Wars 7x7, Wolverine The Lost Trail, and Zomia 1 by Brian Sovereign. But like I said, I've been listening to a ton of audiobooks lately. That is quickly becoming my preferred way to consume books. And speaking of audiobooks, I've got 25 free codes to give away of any of the audiobooks that I've narrated. The first 25 people who send me an email to Roger with a D, at thelavaflow.com will receive a free code for one of my Libertarian audiobooks. All you have to do is email me and tell me the title of the book that you want. You can choose from either of my Libertarian titles, either Neither Bullets Nor Ballots, Essays on Voluntarism, or Homeschooling: A Hope for America. All I ask from you as return is an unbiased review of the book that you get. Daryl also asks, what is your predicted finish to Game of Thrones? First, Daryl, I should ask you how you're liking your Khaleesi now after last week's episode. I mean, holy shit, she went full-on statist. But to answer your question, Daryl, I think Jon or Tyrion will probably end up killing Dany, and I hope to see the 7 kingdoms fall apart into 7 actual kingdoms instead of one full country. Secession for the win. However, I think that somebody will end up on the Iron Throne, and it's probably either going to be Jon or Bran, I think. And one more quick question from Daryl. If you were to make a turducken-type animal using only protected or endangered species, what 3 would you use, and how would you cook it? So, I'll admit, I'm not very well versed in endangered species, so I had to look up a list. But from that list, I would go with African wild ass because, well, I'm an ass man. I would also go with the pink fairy armadillo just because that sounds awesome. And Mexican spotted owl because I love Mexican food. And for a Southern boy, there is only one way to cook it. You fry it, of course. Daryl, thanks for all the questions. I have a bunch more questions next week from both supporters and non-supporters, so I'll get to those then. Thank you so much for all the questions, guys, and keep those questions coming in. Thank you for listening to the show this week. As always, I need to thank my favorite PorcFest producer, Jessica, for her help with the show. For the show notes of this episode, where I put links and other information that's been on this show, go to thelavaflow.com/131. I don't have any new supporters this week, but thanks to all of my awesome supporters, I'm still at $267.57 per episode, or 53.51% of the way towards my next goal of $500 per episode. Guys, thank you for all of your support. Remember, when I hit this next goal, I'm going to be upping the content that I bring you from half an hour per week to a full hour. I know you want more content from me, and I want to give it to you. So add your pledge today to help me bring you twice the lava flow that you're getting today. So exercise your free market muscles by going to thelavaflow.com/support and giving a per-episode donation of as little as $1 an episode using Federal Reserve notes through Patreon, or monthly using Subscribestar, or using cryptocurrencies through Bitbacker. I want to be able to bring you more content soon, so make sure to add your donation today to help make that happen. I have one new Apple Podcast review this week. The Sick Puppy says, "Get your jimmies rustled with this podcast. Among the multiple podcasts I listen to, one that I look forward to every week is The Lava Flow with Roger Paxton. He eloquently discusses domestic and foreign issues plaguing our world, whether it be authoritarian governments sinking a brand new seastead, fuck Thailand in the neck with geopolymer concrete, to corrupt policemen receiving the justice they deserve. Roger crushes it. Keep up the good work." Thanks so much, Puppy, for that awesome review. I very much appreciate those awesome words. You rock, man. And if you have a minute and you want to hear your review read right here on the show, please go to thelavaflow.com/Apple and leave me a rating and a review. All the cool kids like Puppy are doing it. Thank you to everyone who's left me a rating and a review so far. You guys rock. To all of you who haven't, can you guys help me out and go leave a review for me? Go to thelavaflow.com/Apple to do that now. Until next time, keep striking the root.
Thank you for listening to The Lava Flow at thelavaflow.com. Don't miss an episode. Subscribe now at thelavaflow.com/subscribe. This has been a Pax Libertas Productions podcast.